Hi everyone and welcome. Welcome to another Ironhack webinar. Before I go on, please let me know in the chat if you can hear me and see me well. I believe you can see Frantz as well. For those of you who are new here and have never seen me before, my name is Raquel. I work at Ironhack. This is an Ironhack webinar. And we are a global tech school. This means that we have boot camps all over the world and in remote. We have several campuses spread into Europe and America. And we have courses, intensive courses in web development, data analytics, cybersecurity, and of course, UX UI design. So if you're interested in knowing more, and especially if you're from Amsterdam, I'm going to leave here a link for you because we will be having an open house tomorrow. If you want to know more about us, if you've been following us, and if you want to know how we work, I'm going to leave a link here, perfect, that you can hear as well. Actually, would love to know where you're seeing us from. I'm talking from Lisbon, so would love to know if you're in the same time zone, which is your city. If you have alumni here, let us know in the chat. I believe we're good. All right. So, Milan, all right, perfect. A few rules from Crowdcast before we go on. If it's the first time that you're here, I can see that you have discovered the chat. All right. Barcelona, perfect. Some people from the Netherlands, that's amazing. All right, so the chat is for you to interact, for you to leave your comments, leave your feedbacks, for you to interact with each other as well. But if you want to ask questions, and we really encourage you to ask some questions, you can leave them on the Ask a Question section you can see here below the videos. We will make space in the end for you to, for us to answer your questions. So if you want to make some, please point them down, leave them here, and they will be here kept until the end. Because if you leave them on the chat, we probably get, they will be missed. From Braga, all right, perfect. So besides the Ask a Question, as I said, we will go through it in the end. If you want to know more about us, I left here the link for the open house, as I told you, and I will share again, because if you want to know more about Ironhack, you can ask your questions there. You have here a green button below the video with some useful links, upcoming webinars, our posts, some stuff that you find useful. Okay, and for those of you who usually ask, this webinar is recorded. So if you feel like you want to review this, or if you want to pass this to a friend who can attend today, you can. It will be accessible through the very link, the same link that you can see in here, and you just need to be registered as if you were attending. All right, perfect. All right, so I think I will pass, if you can hear me, I can see that everyone has introduced him. Beirut, wow, amazing. I will pass now the word to Frantz and we can go on.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so I assume everybody can see the screen.
Yes, it's all good.
Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, so thanks, Raquel, for the introduction. Thanks for having me tonight. That's my first time with Ironhack, and that's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to be able to discuss about UX design. And I know a lot of people from Ironhack are students or people like looking for a change in this industry, in this domain. So if I can inspire someone, that would be already a success. And then I will go through a simple presentation tonight that should roughly take 40 minutes. And then, as Raquel mentioned, then we can go through a couple of questions if you do have some. So I will go through my background. What did I do as a bachelor, master degree? How do I ended up at TomTom? And a bit through TomTom UX design process and use case scenario. So long story short, I come from Paris. This is where I'm born and raised. But I study in Nantes, which is basically like a small city in the west coast of France. As you can see on this beautiful TomTom maps already. This is one of the, I think, honestly, one of the best school in France, maybe in Europe right now. It's called l'École de Design de Nantes, which means the School of Design of Nantes, as simply as that. I've originally started with a bachelor in industrial design, actually. So back on the days, I was thinking like design were mostly about product, about tangible things, about hardware. So this is what I learned for my first 3 years as designer, basically learning the hardware techniques, 3D software, creativity, sketchings, those kind of things that I really enjoy. But I quickly realized that I was more interested into the beginning of that design process. So interesting about the reason and the insight why this product makes sense. Why is this product is making a good and a great user experience? So based on that assumption, I was actually I've been lucky enough to be part of a new master degree that my school opened in China. So I finished my master degree in Shanghai for the 2 years of this master degree that was mainly focused on UX design, strategy, anthropology. So that's been an amazing experience, of course, being like abroad for 2 years, being able to discover a new culture, both personally and professionally, where we, during 2 years, conducted a lot of seminars, a lot of project partnership with Chinese design studios such as IDEO, that is based in Shanghai, companies like Kenwood, doing like cross-discipline culture anthropology seminars. So we've learned a lot. I've learned a lot into how the culture can impact the design experience. And I ended up graduated with those two pillars, those two worlds, in a way, like the hardware side and the digital side, and really wanted to combine them. So I've been looking for a hand-off study internship that was giving me that opportunity to combine those two worlds, and that's how I ended up in Amsterdam, in this beautiful country that I am living at for the past 7 years already. I found a great opportunity in a design studio called We Are Perspective. This is a really small design studio, but that was all I was looking for at this time. Like 10 people were working in Amsterdam. And I've been working in this kind of Internet of Things, so IoT project, where exactly what I meant, like I was combining this physical world and digital world. So in that kind of project that you can see right now was back in 2016, where we made a concept about blind navigation. So basically you set up some destination on your mobile app. You say, I want to go to this museum, and then the handlebar of your bike that we design as well was supposed to smoothly and gradually vibrate to show you where you have to turn. It doesn't show you that it's the next street on the right. It shows that it's like on the northeast side. So it's an idea of just flying around, being able. So I've worked on the industrial design side, sketching, creating, and I also worked and I was responsible for the application. So going through the wireframes from scratch to final prototype, working prototype, actually. That's how I realized I was really into this connection of those two, like being able to see that even though this is one hardware and one software, at the end of the day, this is one and only one experience. So I've been working on a couple of those projects. I also been working into the medical industry. One of these projects called Brougère was amazing to work on. That's basically a Polish startup that come up with a liquid crystal technology and wanted to basically allow the woman to perform a breast cancer test as early as possible at home. So being able to make a user-friendly product from something that it's like quite medical. Again, we was responsible at We Are Perspective, the design studio I was working at this moment, to design the product and to design the software, the app. Basically, the user experience was fundamental in that project. Like we literally asking a woman to get naked and take a picture of the breast while performing and asking and replying some questions on an app. So the tone of voice, how do we provide a non-invasive, reliable, trustworthy experience for this breast cancer screening technology? That was the main challenge. So working again, both on the hardware, I was part of those brainstorming sessions, sketching. That's always something I like to do. Being able to align this product experience with the software experience. So going through what I mentioned, the tone of voice, how do you talk to a woman to make sure that she's reassured, that everything's going to be fine? How do you make sure that she plays the product on the right place? All those kind of things that we work through. I've worked on the Internet of Things side, medical side, and a bit later on in the other design studio I've worked for the past 2 years called Pilotfish. I've been stepping the automotive world. Pilotfish is a small design studio, again, roughly 10 people in Amsterdam, but it's also based in Taipei and in Munich, or used to be in Munich, now it's in Berlin. But because of this German office, they built quite a nice relationship with those top car brands that you have in Munich. So BMW in that example. So I've been able to work for BMW in this project for a couple of months. And basically being able to, the problematic was like, how can we highlight those interaction between the steering wheel and the cluster display, so the screen that you have being your steering wheel. Nowadays, or back on the days, we used to have a lot of buttons on your steering wheel. One button was allocated to one function. And the idea of this project was like, what if we have like trackpad? What if we have like one tangible and mechanical product that could interfere and interact with a lot of different features, a lot of different functions? That's an example of the prototype, unfortunately, and that's also the problem of working in the automotive design world. A lot of things are confidential. So this is one of the only picture I can show you. This is a small prototype that we worked out, but that was really interesting because the project we've done was basically responsible to this BMW i8 Roadster concept card. So as you can see on the small BMW official video, and when you can see when people are sliding to the autonomous driving mode, they use like mechanical interaction on the steering wheel, and you can see the impact on the cluster display on the interface below. So how those mechanical interaction are connected with the interface, and how to make sure that everything, the whole package, brings like a nice experience to the user. That was the main exercise. That's what I did, and that's how I discovered the automotive design world. And after 6 years in design studios, so 2 different experiences, but in similar design studio, design agencies, small ones, I've learned a lot, and that's an experience I will recommend to anyone, any designer starting his or her career, because you learn a lot. You learn the speed of work. Most of the time, the clients call you, or BMW in that case, because they don't have the time to do it internally. They want to also have something as quick as possible. Most of the time, because of the small amount of people working there, you not only working as a UX designer or industrial designer, you work a lot of different things. I was able to do communications with clients, storytelling, graphic designs, and I think that's a palette that helped me now at TomTom. A lot of people talk about this T-shaped designer, where you're really good at one skills and then broaden up your other skills. And I think that's working in design agency taught me a lot about that. And of course, creativity, as you are always working on different projects, different industry, like I say, medical, automotive. A lot of benefits. I've learned a lot during this past 6-7 years. But one of these downsides is also the fact that you most of the time don't have that time. Like clients call you and say, we need that in 2 months, or we need that we don't have the time, neither the money to invest into user research. We don't have the time, neither the money to do user tests to be sure that what you design makes sense. So that was a bit of a frustration after a couple of years. And that's mainly the reason I was like, okay, I think I've learned a lot. I've got the palette of skills to be able to step up. And because I really love working in the automotive design world, because I think that's exactly what, even though I'm mainly focused on UX design and interaction design anymore, that's where we can bring a lot of values as UX designer. Like the user experience will change in the coming years inside the car. So I thought as a really nice industry to work on. And basically that's how I end up at TomTom. Well, I ended up at TomTom, but not at the office because I've started 6 months ago. So I'm still pretty new at TomTom. And I've started in the middle of this pandemic that you all quite aware of. So the reality of the jobs looks a bit more like this, actually. This is my TomTom office. This is me right now. I'm at my desk. But I think being part of a big company, also international company, was a real benefit. And even though I never met like physically my colleagues, I think I still feel part of that company. And the onboarding process was really amazing. So this is how I ended up at TomTom, as I mentioned 6-7 months ago already. So I will go through TomTom a bit because I don't know if anyone knows what TomTom is exactly about. But for those who don't know, TomTom has been founded in 1991. Actually, the video that you can see right now is a pretty good piece of history. It's like back in 1985, where they were using the MoMA. So MoMA means mobile mapping vehicle. So basically the old school Google streetcar. But back in 1905, TomTom was already the first one to digitalize these networks, road networks. And back in 1985, they were already responsible of 30% of the Dutch road network. They're actually pretty proud to be, and they like to say they are one of the first Amsterdam startup, and I think that's pretty close to reality. But even though they started mapping and digitalizing that network, they really started and became successful in 2004 when they launched their first TomTom navigation device that we call PNDs, personal navigation device right now. This is something I guess everybody knows. Personally, when I told my friends that I was joining TomTom back in September, they all told me like, this is the company that makes those GPS, right? So that's true. This is on one side what made TomTom pretty successful. So you can't deny that this is something that was really helpful for the company back on the days. But the world has changed, obviously. Technology has evolved, and TomTom tried to keep up with different other businesses. So if you mention TomTom right now, I have to say that TomTom is way more than that. TomTom is also about autonomous driving, for example. We are responsible to build HD maps. So for automated driving, we are actively working as a company to make autonomous driving a reality. And we are pretty sure that it goes by building those high definition maps. TomTom is one of the 3 companies in the world that creates actually those maps for autonomous driving. So next to here, technology and Google. But TomTom is also building Maps API. So basically, APIs is actually this connection that you have between the map and the car and the data. So how do you transfer that connection? TomTom is pretty famous for this map creation. It's not an easy task, let's say, to create a really precise map. And keeping them up to date is even more difficult. So being able to tell the user, the driver, and update them with an up-to-date map is what TomTom is doing for a big part of this business. And they're basically able to, for example, remap or give information to the driver in a city like Amsterdam, for example, like every 8 minutes. Every 8 minutes, you've got new information about the map. And that goes with traffic data. I think TomTom is pretty famous, especially on traffic, providing those information in real time or every 8 minutes, for example, in Amsterdam. And that's a pretty good example. If you see on the top, you've got top left corner, the city of Milan in January 2020, so right before the COVID hit us. Los Angeles on the top right corner, and then below you've got the same situation, the same maps, but in the middle of the lockdown. So you can see the impact of traffic, like all those reds represent the traffic, and then of course in the middle of the lockdown, traffic was really low. So all those kind of insights, all those kind of data are of course really helpful for us designer. We are really a data-driven company. And that's what helps us to learn from these insights and translate the insight into navigation software. Navigation software is what I do as a designer at TomTom. This is what I focus on because those those display that you see is exactly what I focus on. This is the experience I need to bring to the driver. TomTom is working for a couple of top car brands. So we're basically building the user experience. We are building the framework, and sometimes we give it to the client with different user interface, so different look and feel. Sometimes they bought directly the look and the feel that we designed. So it depends of the car brands. But this is our main clients like Renault, FCA, which is Fiat Chrysler, PSA, Peugeot, Citroën, etc. So this is basically, as a designer, as a UX designer at TomTom, what I worked on, this display, this software, and this is what the overall UX team is working on. Talking about the UX team, we are talking about actually 60 people roughly, and in TomTom in general, we are like around 4,000 worldwide. So for you to have an idea. The UX team is working on 3 different continents, 9 locations, and all over 25 nationalities, 26 actually, because we just hired like a new Hungarian designer, so that will add up on the top of this nationality list. But that's what makes it also really nice working in this international atmosphere. We're all working from home, as you know, so also being able to connect every day with people from Detroit, Taipei, Melbourne is also what makes this onboarding for me pretty easy, and what makes this UX team quite special. But 60 people doesn't work on the same project, of course. So we divided those the UX team into different groups that we are that we decided to call regarding painters to stick to the creativity domain. So you've got 9 painter groups, 9 UX design team, if you want to see it like this, going from Escher, Frida Kahlo, Warhol, Picasso towards Banksy and Bob Ross team. Each team is responsible of a domain of what we call product units. So the Escher team, completely on the left, will work only on the maps. They will mainly be visual designer working on how the traffic looks like on the map, how those street mountain relief looks like, those kind of things to make sure the maps are beautiful as possible. And Kahlo will be on the navigation side. We've got the personalization towards Banksy working on the mobile app that we have at TomTom. It's called Amigo. It's basically the same as Waze, or trying to compete with Waze and those kind of mobile app that you have, mobile navigation app. Until like Barbara, so completely on the right, for example, that is a team that is focused on conceptual and let's say upcoming projects like AR, eye tracking glasses in your car, heads-up display, all those kind of projects and experience that you probably gonna face in a couple of years. So as I mentioned, each team is feel like I'm part of the Warhol team personally. For example, I work on the navigation and personalization side. On my team, we've got visual designer, but we've got also interaction designer. We've got UX researcher connected to the team, and we've got a team lead. So in my team, we're, for example, 9 people right now. And all together, all those teams all together, even though we're working on different product units, we are quite connected, of course. And we are all trying to embrace complexity. That's the main goal of this job as TomTom, if I can sum it up like this. Driving a car is quite complex, especially as TomTom. When you work for different car companies, you have different buttons, different size displays, different options. And the goal of designer is to simplify this complexity. That's, I think, the main, how we can sum it up quickly. You have to keep in mind the user also makes split-second decision, and our goal is to make sure that they arrive safely, as simple as that. We also are facing a new technology, new generation, and a lot of people, of course, are using mobile apps right now to navigate, and that's also one of our main challenge. How to make sure that we bring a better user experience. We bring more values to the infotainment that you have in the car already embedded in the car, and that basically make the user lift his mobile app and his phone on the side. So embrace complexity, of course. I mentioned also a lot of displays. That's one of the best challenge for the designers at TomTom. We work for different clients, so we have different size of the display, meaning we have to be adaptive, we have to be flexible. Working for a 10 inches or 15 inches display is definitely not the same experience. So going for split screen, for example, in the 10 inches to full screen in the 15 inches, those kind of experiences are different, and we need to adapt. That's also part of this complexity. Being able to distribute basically and display the right amount of information exactly where it's needed. That's one of the goals. And that's a good representation of it. You can see like the different source of information. You can see that you have the head unit on the number 1. This is the priority. Driver have to look at the streets, look at the roads, look up front, while the second cluster display behind the steering wheel will be more about anticipation, like, okay, the next turn is on the right. I know it because it's on my just right below. Towards the planning on the dashboard display, which is more about interacting with the map, having the route comparison, the route navigation, and then it's also connected with the passenger experience. Passenger can connect and play around with this dashboard. So all those different experience has to be aligned towards like a holistic UI framework, and basically, again, the main goal is to just be sure that to provide the right information at the right time, right place, no matter the screen configuration. Just one. In order to achieve that goal, we basically go through a pretty simple process. I think if a few of you in the audience right now is a designer, you probably know that process, nothing particular. Going from the research, going from the definition towards the design and the development of the product. That's pretty simple. You have to know that on the top of that, of course, we also have the business side. We also have the engineering working on that. So there is no reason the designer design on its side an experience and deliver it to the developers. Developers are integrated and part of the conversation on an early phase. We also have what we call design critiques that basically allow designers to show work in progress, discuss it along the process. We have design reviews to show like the kind of final work and validate it. And then towards the development, shipment, iterating, trying and repeating that process is something that is key. And then the beginning of the process is the definition, as I mentioned. So pretty much doing the right thing. You can't look for all the information, so we need to doing the right thing in that matter, like discovering what we want to learn from. And for that, we've got a UX research team that is really helpful, of course. They basically have different techniques, different approach, and they try to come up with a lot of insights. So those different techniques are quite interesting. It depends, of course, of what you want to learn, but one of them is in-car usability tests. So as simply as sitting next to a driver, next to a user, and observing how he drives, observing the understanding the daily routines, empathizing with their struggles. So just looking around, observing, taking notes, and learning from that. when we can't sit in the driving environment next to the user, we also have these in-lab usability tests at the office, where basically represent like a car cockpit in one room of the company. Same principle. We just sit next to the driver, the user, asking a lot of questions, going through guidelines, and filming, recording, so we can look around again and just observe and learn from what we specifically want to learn regarding the project, regarding the topic, of course. But that was back on the days when sitting next to someone you don't know was still able, and when basically driving was still something you could do every day. So of course, because of the pandemic, we had to reinvent ourselves. And that research part was really important because we were, as I mentioned, not able to perform those research. So we had to find different techniques, going more like in a digital way. I think like we all did at work, but that goes with like 3D simulation, for example, especially in this AR environment, but also pre-recording those driving simulation tests. So we filmed the path, and then we had the prototype on the top and asked a lot of questions. What about those navigation arrows, for example? Are they clear enough? What about these transitions? Did you make the right turn at the right moment? Was the information arrived? Did the information arrive at the right moment? Those kind of things. So pre-recording, we also have techniques like eye tracking glasses that are pretty cool. We just give like eye tracking glasses to the user, to the driver, and then we are able to know exactly where he's looking at, how long he's looking at this interface. So we can learn a lot from the safety part, of course. Something that you can know is like one of the rules is like to make it safe, user have to look for something for an element or for 2 seconds. More than 2 or 3 seconds, it's already too long to perform an action on one of the displays while driving. So thanks to those eye tracking glasses, we can record and measure what our users do during the drive, and that's pretty cool. And at least at the end, one of the last technique, that the one we're using the most right now, because it's cheaper and it also actually allows us to touch quite a broad range of users, is this simple user test. It's a website, usertesting.com. Actually, we just upload our prototypes, our picture, whatever we want to get feedback from, and then we go through a couple of questions, asking the user, okay, what are your expectations if you tap on this button? In that example, for example, we were testing the search navigation. So what do you expect if you tap on the arrow back? What do you feel having those two cross buttons next to each other? What's the first cross doing? What is the second one doing in your opinion? Then playing around, observing and learning. So that's all of those, a couple of techniques that we use to learn and to be able to, in the next part of the process, execute, basically. We've learned, we gathered some insights, and now the next step is to translate those insights into ideas, into design, and deliver those ideas into tangible solutions. One of the important thing also is to try to validate early assumptions and design, because we learn something with those research techniques I show you and approach, but sometimes we also full of assumption, and assumptions are terrible because we think this is reality, but this is might be biased. So you have to test, you have to prototype and test and test. That's one of the main learning. I will just quickly go through a use case that explain, I think, that main process. A use case I personally didn't work on, but I think it's quite representative of this process I just introduced to you, which is the closing feature. I guess you all know what this button do. We all use mobile apps, we all use smartphones, websites. Tapping on a cross, just close a panel, close a page. That's pretty intuitive, pretty understandable. But what in a car environment? What if having a cross in a panel was not that easy to find? That's not easy to reach. That's the thing. It's recognizable, it's predictable, but is it glanceable? We talk about this 2 seconds rule. Can you tap, look at it, and tap in less than 2 or 3 seconds? Is it safe? I think that's quite connected. So that's the kind of things, again, validate assumptions while driving. This is different than being on your sofa with your smartphone. And that's the thing. So we thought, going into ideation, going into IDs, what if we remove that cross? And just by removing the cross, replacing with swiping gestures. Swipe the whole panel to close it. And then again, following the process we designed, come up with different wireframes, different options, and test them. So you can probably hear, we just go through this in-lab usability test and test a couple of review different closing interaction.
Is to swipe it to the left.
Oh, okay.
And then based on the eye tracking glasses, we can see, okay, these swiping gestures, like for the Spotify app, for example, for the music app, took 3 seconds. This is safe. This is good enough. This one 1 second, because he already knows.
Because you got more of a, like you can just swipe anywhere. You don't have to look specifically at the little icon.
Yeah.
And you got the whole menu just to swipe off.
Yeah.
So this is what this whole process is all about, testing assumption. And this is what we learned in that specific one. Swiping gesture was easy to use. That was really quick, less than 3 seconds. And then that makes it safe. So I think that's also while driving, that's a special environment that we have to keep in mind. And again, talking about this environment, we also realized that the discoverability was pretty low. That's the downside of it. We performed that user test by asking the user, the driver, to swipe to dismiss and check the time. But what if the user don't know that he has to swipe? And that's a project I've worked on personally, like the last few months. I was responsible, again, being part of the navigation and personalization team, to work on this location. So those personal location, like the favorites, the recent ones that you have in your navigation app, and how to edit them was the main project I had to work on. We're all familiar with this mobile app feature and interactions, especially iOS user, right? Swiping to be able to delete, swiping to be able to rename, whatever. This is something we're quite familiar on a mobile. But what about on a car environment? Again, so this is, again, the process going through ideation phase, going from, I showed just a couple of wireframes. So based on the different phase of the design parts, from the low fidelity completely on the left side, when we start, we just see like blocks and layouts. And we like, maybe that could be like with a pop-up, or maybe that could be with a bottom action overlay. Maybe that could be with a top action overlay that goes over the main panel. Or maybe that could be swiping. And that comes with the idea. And then that's where we was like, okay, we learned that swiping a whole panel while driving was safe, but that was not easy to discover. So we had to test that again, especially within a panel. So we've been, again, going through a couple of tests, A/B testing in that case, showing the users two prototypes, one where you just have to tap on the 3 dots, what we call the overflow icon, and then tapping will reveal the edit option. So in that case, I want to either delete or rename my favorites location. And the second one was like swiping directly. No overflow icon, no button. You have to swipe to reveal those edit options. So assumptions will be, I guess, swiping is easy, right? It's safer. So we test it and realized that was pretty wrong. So I will let you hear that feedback that was made.
This version? Oh, okay. So the dots are not there. So I guess I'm going, the only way that I think I could do this is to click on it. Or, okay, so how else would I do this? Oh boy. Okay, so I see that I have to swipe right, and that is far less intuitive.
Yeah, so that's a pretty good feedback. It's quite clear. And that's actually what it's all about. That's what we wanted to learn, basically, even though we have to keep also in mind that this test, so part of like usertesting.com, again, are made on a tablet. So you are at home, you are not driving. That's something to also keep in mind. But still, the feedback is pretty clear. We actually sent these 2 prototypes to 15 people, and only 3 of them were able to find this swipe interaction. So that's exactly what we wanted to learn. And then you basically be able to continue and ideate again based on these validated assumptions. So we learned that this is not the case. We learned that designing for driving in motion and designing before driving in that case is different, and swiping gestures that even though it's pretty safe while driving to remove and dismiss like a notification, a call, for example, is not the same as swiping to delete a favorite location within your favorite list. But that's, I guess, the main point of that presentation, and I think what I've learned at TomTom for the past 6 months, and something that sounds a bit cliche, but it's pretty much true. That's like failure is key, and you have to fail early, you have to fail often, but that's how you learn, that's how you progress, and that's how you move forward. Like the use case I just showed you is one example, but that was basically the way we were being able to continue and learn. And basically that's kind of the idea, because even with the most obvious assumption, sometimes you will learn and be able to iterate and improve your design, improve your product experience. And that's the main goal, basically. We need to follow that process, fail, learn, and having this end goal in mind, which is delivering safe and delightful product experience. So if I can conclude on this one, I say this is like a learning by doing process, especially at TomTom. This is completely different from what I used to do in design agencies, because we just didn't have the time to learn by doing back on this design agency years that I had. Here you go with the observation. We get a pretty good understanding of our users, of our community. So we're able to deliver experience to them, prototype, low quality prototype, high fidelity prototype, whatever. You just need to test and learn from your users towards the repetition of that process and the shipment with the developers. This is just one part of the process. Of course, I could talk about a lot about other things, but I think that was a good representation of this process as a UX designer at TomTom. As I mentioned, I'm also working there for 7 months already, so I will be really happy to tell you what is it after 3 years. But if you have any questions right now, or even if you want to continue the conversation later, just feel free to contact me. It will be a pleasure for me to continue that conversation. So thanks all of you for listening, and I guess if you have any questions, I'm here for you.
Hi again, and thank you for this presentation. I know that a lot of it was super clear, and guys, if you need to review something, of course you can still review it because we have the recording, but we have a bit of time for questions, guys. So if you want to make your questions, you can leave them on the Ask a Question still, and we have time to answer a few of your questions regarding the examples that Frantz gave, his experience, or maybe something that you want to ask related to the process he shared. And let's go for the questions. We have a first one in here. It's from Anthony, and he's asking, now that you're working for a bigger company, do you feel like you have the same freedom in terms of creativity compared to your previous agency?
That's a pretty good question. That's actually what I was pretty afraid of when I left the design agency world, because like, you have a lot of freedom, of course, especially in small design agencies. You work from a project in, like, let's say, medical world, and then you jump to something completely different in a month or two, and then you have a lot of creativity. And I was a bit afraid to like go into TomTom to just like focus on one product and lose that creativity. But that's actually one of the good And the good news after 7 months at TomTom that it's actually completely the opposite. I really underestimate the number of details and that you have within such a product. And on the top of that, I think I also I'm lucky because I'm part of one of these painter group that I show you. Mine is really focusing on designing the new interface. So we've got we've got different OS, for example, iOS. So we've got we are working right now to what basically all our clients, all the cars will have in their software for the next 3 to 4 years. So I've got a lot of creativity. Of course, I have to align with what I've been done in the past at TomTom, but still being able to create and come up with the future of navigation and driving experience.
Perfect. So if you had to sum this up, and someone else was asking here, now that you have experience in working in design studios, so the agencies, and inside a big company, which workflow do you prefer? If you had to choose?
It's difficult, I guess. It's also really personal. I know a lot of people that did the opposite, started in a big company and were really frustrated because they were as I mentioned, the opposite, really focus on one thing, you're gonna design this experience, this product, and that's it. No opportunity to enlarge your creativity, to work on something else. And they switched to design studio, and I really love it. I've got also when I was working for BMW, I don't know if I should say that, but my BMW client was telling me that I was lucky to be able to be as creative as possible within the design studio, because at BMW, such a big company, they were really they had to go through a lot of hierarchy, of course, a lot of internal decision that stopped the process. And that's why they're contacting agencies like us. We were able to go really quickly from the idea towards the prototype and the final deliverables. So on my side, I'm just really happy for the past 6 months. I'm just discovering an entire new world, and I'm happy because I can really dive in depth. And that's, I think, what I like. Is I feel like what I'm doing is based on real user data, user insights, and it just makes sense compared to sometimes in design studio. Not every time, but sometimes you would just stay a bit on the surface. So I go for the company, but that's personal.
All right. I hope that answered your question, Crystal, if you're still here on the chat. And I hope that cleared you guys, but it is personal, right? So everyone will have their own view regarding their own experience, of course. In here, Alex was asking, I've read some interesting articles about designing for the car industry. And in this way, I found how restrictive and how many regulations the industry has. How is your design process different compared with other digital products?
Well, that's kind of true, but it's there is a lot of rules, of course, in terms of safety, in terms of privacy, in terms of that's something I'm discovering as well. But I was also really surprised. For example, the first project I showed you, the medical project, when you go into the medical industry, there is a ton of regulation as well. So it's kind of the same. And again, as I answered Anthony in the first question, I'm quite lucky because I'm part of basically the design team that is working on what's going to be next. So of course we're still following those regulations, those rules, but we have a certain part of creativity. So I'm basically going out of the box, going as wide as possible, and then those constraints and those rules, those regulations, narrow everything down along the process. So I was, again, quite surprised. I was expecting a bit more of rules. But of course, you cannot also completely reinvent the wheel. There is something that have been done in the design industry, automotive design industry, that not going to be completely changed, but that's okay. That doesn't change the process, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you think that blocks your creativity in any way?
No, I don't think so. When I started, I was like, okay, I want to show that also, I want to show what I'm capable of. So you were doing a lot of things, and then people was like, okay, don't go too crazy as well, of course. So that blocks your creativity in a certain way, because there is no point to spend hours working on something that is not implementable.
Yeah.
So you have to know the technical sides, what's feasible or not. But I think that's the same for a medical product, even for an app. You have to know what the developers can or can't code. So
yeah, that's true. All right, here Peter was also asking regarding how you work. You mentioned your team has 9 people. Can you briefly describe how you work with them and how often?
Sorry, I didn't hear the beginning.
Yeah, no worries. You mentioned your team has 9 people. Can you briefly describe how you work with them and how often?
Yeah, so the Werrell team, as I'm pretty proud to be part of, is based on 9 people, I said, yeah. So we have basically the team lead is from Belgium, roughly I say around 40 years old. He also got a background in design studio actually. He's leading the team of 2 visual designers from Belgrade, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of, and almost 5 now, interaction designer. So I am from Amsterdam. We've got a Dutch interaction designer from Amsterdam as well, and we've got Camille, interaction designer from Lodz in Poland. So that's like the panel of nationalities, and then we basically every day we've got a stand-up call. So we just like meet every day on Teams, and then catch up on the project we're working on. What did you do yesterday? What are you going to work on today? The team lead is aligning all of us on the goals of the quarters. We've got quarters objectives. We call them also OKR, so objectives and key results. So we need to check that and align towards the company objectives. And that's how it goes. So I was pretty surprised that the company is quite flexible. So as I said, I never met physically my colleagues, but we are like on calls, either on Teams or on Slack every day. So I feel like I know them pretty well at the end. So I think that's pretty good feedback.
All right, that's good to know. And someone here was also asking, this is a different question. Have you met or worked with designers that became designers later in the professional career? Say a web developer turned into a designer. So would TomTom, in other words, would TomTom employ someone who didn't study design, I'd say in the first place?
I don't want to answer that for TomTom, but I guess you have to, I don't know, maybe if you don't have, if you have a portfolio, if you have a presentation, if you show that you're motivated, you always can find something. I don't remember TomTom having like a strict rule of you need to have a design bachelor or master degree. I think we all do in my team, but I've got friends that been through Ironhack school, or the people that completely changed and then they were like account manager towards UX designer, and then found a company, found a job, and then are working for years now. So I think I think it's possible. I don't want to talk for TomTom because I don't know exactly, but I won't be surprised if it's possible.
All right. I hope that answered your question, Jenny. Yeah, and it was about people who changed their career. So there was an example from web developer, but it can be any other career change. And I'm glad you say that. So I know that you don't have this experience yourself, but you said you have friends. So the next question is, do you find the bootcamp essential to enter the UX industry, to get into the network and gain skills? And I imagine this question is more for people who are looking to change their career.
Of course, yeah. I've one of my best friends actually did one in Paris. So I was quite surprised at the beginning. I was like, okay, I spent 5 years studying this. How can you do the same in 3 months? But to be honest, he gave me pretty good feedback. This is just, let's say, I guess, some ingredients. So it all depends on what you do with them afterwards. But I think it's a pretty good basis. Being able to learn directly with people that are working in companies. So you have also the network. I think that's also pretty interesting. So I think the boot camps or those seminars,
intensive courses.
Yeah, exactly. Intensive courses are pretty good to start with, but at the end, it's the same everywhere. Like it all depends on what you do with that afterwards.
Yeah, I can leave here a link for you and for everyone who's interested in the UX bootcamp at Ironhack if you want to take a look of what we teach and if it is what you're expecting. So I can leave here a link in the end for that. And another specific question from George. If you were to start in a company with an agile development team but no UX, what are the first steps you would do to include UX in the methodology?
Good one. Well, I didn't work in a company that was not in design world, but I guess implementing a process and not only within the design department, within the whole company was something I will do. I think people underestimate or don't know exactly the design process, don't think that could be helpful at their level. As I mentioned, I showed you the design process. So this is what UX designers are following, but this is also integrating and connecting with product owners, product managers, engineers. And I think that's one of those advice I say, like connect all the people, make them part of it. And the first step will be, I guess, like having designing this process, being sure that this process fits your company and include everyone.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hope that answered your question, George. And in here, Marina was asking, in this COVID situation, how fully remote UX research and testing works for your team? Like, how do you do it?
This is what I quickly introduced at the beginning of the research part. So starting in September, I've been to the office 3 times. In September, one to pick up my laptop and then one to work, and then that was closed again. So we all working fully remotely from all over the world. So we basically adapt the UX research to it. So I show a couple of examples where we had to reinvent. So we're not able to sit next to each other in a car. So we do it mostly with what I guess you can still see my screen, right? So yes. Mostly with those techniques, which is like, this one mainly like usertesting.com, which is a website. We build up the timeline, the questions, the guidelines that we want to achieve, and then upload prototypes, upload image, and then ask questions. This is what we use the most right now because it's really fast, it's cheap, and we can touch a lot of people from all over the world. But we also have 3D simulation like this kind of product. So we had to adapt ourselves. So this is what we do mainly right now.
Yeah. All right. I hope that answered your question, Marina. And guys, we won't have time to answer all of your questions. I can see that we have quite a few. We'll go for 1 or 2. All right. And in here, someone is asking, for someone that doesn't have a design background and no design skills at all, where would you recommend to start the journey of UX design? And these can be resources that you can advise before even starting a bootcamp, for instance.
I will recommend to read a lot. Nowadays there's so many sources like medium.com, like this website, when you can focus and say on everything that goes into UX design. Please send me a sum up, so you've got this kind of overview every week of all the design articles, all those trends that are supposed to be coming up, on the next quarter. So all those kind of things, just being aware of what's happening in the design world. I think that's a good basis. You've got books, of course, as well. Feel free to send me an email. I can recommend and send you a lot of links and resources. Also, being able to also know the tools is something that is interesting. So what tools for research? What tools do I need for wireframes, ideation, the first step? What tools to prototype? If you start having an idea of these resources, I think that will help beforehand.
All right, perfect. So for the last question we have here, I was curious, I was curious to know, with the product life cycles in the automotive industry being significantly longer in the automotive software industry, how do you find the product development and design process differ from that for the more consumer-facing products? I'm not pretty sure that I really understand this question. If you want to take a look on the Ask a Question section.
Yeah, I think I do.
Or you understand? Perfect.
I think I did understand. But I'm probably not going to be able to completely answer the question because I'm working, as I said, at TomTom for the past 7 months only, and I've been working on a couple of projects. So I show one with this personal location, for example, and I've just started to work with the developers. So the project is just starting. I'm just starting this development phase. Roughly, I can say I know how long it has to be done. We've got 2 months to implement such a product. I know that we go with deliverables, so they send us the first prototype. We've got tablets when we can test. Most of the time we put the tablet in the car and we're still testing while driving because that's something important. That's completely different from testing at home. But that's all I know from this development phase yet. So I don't know if we're going to make it into those 3 months timeline. I don't know if it's difficult. I used to be pretty comfortable with working with developers in Design Studio because they were sitting next to me. And I think that's something I really recommend in that case. Communication is key. And right now I'm working with people in Poland or Belgrade. So it's also a different way of working. And I'm just learning that. So I can't really tell you that.
All right. Well, I think this covers it. It was a wrap for the questions. Thank you guys for asking a lot of things, and I hope this was very useful. We have pretty cool feedback in here. So thank you guys for all your feedback, guys and girls, of course. So it was amazing, and thank you, friends. I don't know if you want to add something before we go.
No, thank you all. Thanks for the question. I hope I answered them correctly. I hope that you found what you were looking for. And again, if you have any more questions, I will be happy to continue the conversation later. So feel free to send me an email and I'll be happy to help.
Yes, perfect. So just a reminder, guys, I left here in the chat. I can share again. We'll have an open house tomorrow, especially for people in the Netherlands. If you want to know a bit more about the UX Bootcamp or the others, you can ask your questions there. And well, it was really great to have you here, guys, today. And I really hope to see you in upcoming webinars. And thank you, friends, of course.
Cheers.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.